Hello, good afternoon, students. How are you all doing today? Welcome back to biology class. So the last class we had, we talked about the level of organization, right? Whereby we talked about the structures, how the level of organization is structured, that is the hierarchical structure of organisms, right? And we talked from the simplest to the complex, whereby I told you about the cells, the tissue, the organ, the system, and the organism itself. Okay, we also talked about the kingdom, the broadest level of classification of organisms, known as kingdom, whereby we mentioned the person that proposed the classification of organisms under kingdom, which is Robert Whitaker in 1969. We also mentioned the kingdoms, the five kingdoms, which are the kingdom Monera, Protista, kingdom Plantae, Fungi, and kingdom Animalia. All right. We also talked about the different classes under each kingdom. Okay, whereby under the kingdom Plantae, we talked about the spermatophyta, we talked about the talophyta, pteridophyta, we talked about the bryophyta. And under Animalia, we talked about the invertebrates, the vertebrates, whereby under the invertebrates, we have the colentrates, platyhelminthes, Annelida, arthropod, mollusca. And under the vertebrates, we talked about the Species, amphibian, reptilia, apes, and mammalia. Okay, so today we are going to the structure. So today we are going to the structure, the structural, functional, and behavioral adaptation of organisms. Okay, when we started this class, I made mention of the meaning of adaptation, all right? whereby I said adaptation is the process whereby an organism adjusts to its environment in order to survive. And I cited an example using human being, that we human being, we adjust to each season. For instance, this is each period. Of course, we have to adjust to it. And when it comes to Harmattan, rainy season, we know how we adjust ourselves to the seasons in order to survive. So that is what we call adaptation. So today we are looking at the structural, functional, and behavioral adaptation of organisms. Okay, so we want to look at how different different things, how different levels, how different organisms tend to survive even with different seasons, different period. Okay, so living organisms, they tend to adapt to their environment in three major ways, which are the structural, functional, and behavioral adaptation of organisms. Okay, so we will be looking at each of these levels. We'll be looking at each of these category one after the other. And I want you to give me your total attention so that you can understand better. Okay, so we are starting with structural adaptations, right? So when we talk about structural adaptation, we talk about the physical features. We talked about the physical features. When you see structural adaptation, we talked about the physical features of organisms that makes them to adapt to their environment. So we talk about the physical features. Okay, so what do we mean by physical features? Physical means something you can see with your own eyes. So that is the physical feature. That is what we mean by physical features. So all these organisms have their own physical features that allows them to adapt to their environment in order to survive. Okay, so for instance, the tortoise. I'm sure we all know tortoise and we are familiar with tortoise. We know that tortoise has a very hard shell. All right, so the hard shell protects the tortoise, it protects the whole body. So that is the physical feature of tortoise. It has hard shell and it's actually protected from predators. So that is what we mean by physical features, what you can see with your own eyes. All right. So we also have some other animals, some other organisms that have their own physical features that allows them to survive, like the chameleon also. The chameleon has color changing skin. All right. Color changing skin for camouflage. If you are putting on red clothes and a chameleon is beside you, the skin of the chameleon is going to change to the color of the clothes you are putting on. So it will be very difficult for you to even detect that it's an animal. So that is the physical feature of a chameleon, all right, that allows it to survive, to adapt to its environment. So we also have different organisms with their own physical features. So when we talk about the structural adaptation, we are referring to the physical features. Okay, so also the frog, they have webbed feet. Like, what do we mean by webbed feet? Just like you have it in like you have it in hen, webbed feet, something like this. You see their feet, something joining their feet together like this. So this thing that you are seeing makes this leg a webbed feet. Okay, so it allows it to be able to swim efficiently. Do you understand? So that is the function of the webbed feet of frog. You can also see it with your naked eyes. That's why we say it's a physical feature, because you can see it with your naked eyes. So that is the structural adaptation. So when we talk about structural adaptation, or you see any question asking you about the structural adaptation of an animal, what you look for is the physical features. that allows the animal to adjust or adapt to its environment. Okay, so we move to the second category, which is the functional adaptation. Please pay total attention. Pay total attention. We are going to be treating different questions under this topic, just like we do. Okay, so please pay total attention. So we are moving to the second category, which is the functional adaptation. What do we mean by functional adaptation? From the word function. So it is the biological processes, the internal biological process that helps organisms survive in their environment. Okay, so this one you cannot see it with your own naked eye because it is not the physical features, it is inward. So it is the internal process that occurs in the organism. So you can't see it with your own eyes. For example, the frog. The frog can absorb water, like they can absorb water and oxygen through its skin. So when they are inside water, they can absorb the water and then absorb the oxygen via their skin. So that is an example of functional adaptation because you cannot see the process with your own eyes. The process occurs inside of them. So it's an internal process that occurs in organism. That is what we call the functional adaptation. Okay, so we also have the behavioral adaptation. These are the behaviors that they exhibit that allows them to be free from predators. Okay, so this is behavioral adaptation. So it allows them to be free from from predators, from prey. So and they get to live and survive in their environment. So that is what we call behavioral adaptation. So we are going to delve into each of these features one after the other. Okay, so under this behavioral adaptation, there's something we call hibernation. Hibernation. It's actually major types major types of behavioral adaptation. So we call it hibernation. Okay. So what do we mean by hibernation? Please take note of whatever we'll be saying here. So what do we mean by adaptation? Hibernation rather. So hibernation, it's a long-term state of inactivity when an animal slows its metabolism, like the heart rate, the breathing, to conserve energy. So the normal activities of the organism, what the organism does normally, it reduces the activities in order to conserve energy. Okay, so and this particular um adaptation, it occurs during cold period, during cold season. All right, so it occurs during cold season. It occurs during cold season. Okay, so and different organisms, they have their own way of adjusting, they have their own way of exhibiting this particular type of adaptation. All right, but then it occurs during cold season to the animals. So each organisms have their own way to carry out hibernation. All right, so it is also a state of deep sleep when an organism's metabolism, heart rate, and body temperature decreases to conserve energy. Just like I explained earlier, that it's a process whereby the organism is not really active. The organism is not active. It conserves its energy. Do you understand? Like it conserves its energy for that period. So it does not, when an organism does not want to exhaust the energy is of course, if there is no energy, there is no way an organism will be able to carry out daily activities. So the organism tries to conserve their energy because of the cold season. Even human being, during cold weather, you normally don't feel like doing anything. Yes, So you normally don't feel like doing anything. If you can testify to this, please thumbs up. If you can testify to this, thumbs up. You can hear me and you can testify to what I'm saying. That during cold weather, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. So during cold weather, you feel like sleeping, you feel like, wrapping yourself with wrapper, being on the bed, you don't feel like going out, you don't feel like going to school. Even working class people don't feel like going out. So the same thing happens to organisms. They don't feel like doing anything, so they need to reserve and conserve their energy. They have deep sleep. So that is what we call hibernation. Okay, so don't forget it occurs in cold season. All right, so we also have what we call estivation. 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 You see, these two types of adaptation, they are they are opposite each other. Okay, so estivation is the opposite of hibernation. And what do I mean by opposite? Estivation occurs during hot season. Okay, during hot season. Please take note of that. Take note of that, as we'll be treating past questions under this topic. And it will surprise you that all these things are past questions. Okay, so whatever we are taking you here, whatever we take you here on A1 Tutor Hub, just take note that we are working with syllabus. Yeah, we work with syllabus, and whatever we take you here, it's in the syllabus of UTME released for 2025. So take note of everything. Okay, so estivation is the opposite of hibernation. That is, it occurs during hot season, unlike hibernation that occurs during cold season. Okay, so I am going to be sending some a picture. I'm going to be sending a picture for you to see an example of organisms that experience hibernation and estivation. Okay, that experience hibernation and estivation. So, for instance, snail during estivation, what does snail does? What do they do? They try to cover their face. They try to cover their face with what we call mucus. And if you notice snail during hot season, you see that there is something covering their face, whitish in color. All right, so that thing is them experiencing estivation. When you see a snail being covered by mucus during hot season, during hot weather, the snail is only trying to adapt. Is only trying to adapt to its environment. It's trying to adapt to its environment. So for other organisms too, they have their own ways of adapting. They have their own ways of experiencing estivations, estivation and hibernation. Okay, so talking about the snail, we have mucus covering the face. So I'm going to send an image now. So that you can see. So this is a way of experiencing hibernation, estivation. All right, they try to cover their faces with mucus. So I think I'm going to do this later. It's not coming up. Okay, so but I believe we can relate with snails during hot season, during hot weather, covering their faces with white mucus. So that is estivation. So they don't want to lose all the water inside their body. They don't want to lose all the water, all the nutrients that they have in them. So they needed to, cover themselves with something which is called a mucus, which is a mucus material, mucus structure. So to cover themselves, that is estivation. So hibernation and estivation, this occurs in cold season, this occurs in hot seasons. Okay, so we move to another hiber another example of estivation, which is the tortoise. What does the tortoise do? They try to retreat into its burrows during extreme heat. So you see their shell, that hard shell, they try to hide inside it in order to conserve water, in order not to lose their own energy. So that is how they exhibit their own estivation. Okay, so both hibernation and estivation are survival strategies that allow them to endure harsh environment condition. So they have to conserve their energy and reduce physiological activity. Okay, so we move to another adaptation, another adaptation terms known as the counter shading. Counter shading. If you have any question, please drop your question using the chat box so that we can treat it together. Okay, so we have the counter shading and warning coloration in different organisms. This is another way in which organisms survive. Okay, so we call it counter shading and warning colorations. So for instance, in fishes, what do they do? What do we mean by counter shading? What do we mean by counter shading? What do they do? For instance, the fishes, their upper parts, their upper parts becomes dark. It's a little bit dark, and then the below sides blends with the environment, with the deep water. So it is very hard for you to even notice them. So that is a way they hide. That is one of the ways they protect themselves. So we call it counter shading. So their upper part, the dark upper body becomes blend, like it blends with the environment, with the water, and even the below, it blends with the water. So you will not be able to detect them, not to talk of you killing them. So they try to protect themselves using that. And also the toads, if you notice the toads, it's sometimes you don't even notice they are there because of their skin color. So their skin color tends to blend with the sound, with the floor, like with their environment. So it's very difficult for you to detect and notice them. So these are the ways they adapt to their environment and protect themselves. So if you can hear me, please type I can hear you. If you can hear me, please type I can hear you. Also, we have snakes. That size of snakes also match with the environment. There is one particular snake I've always known about when I was much younger, and the snake is a green snake in color, like it's a very green snake. And if the snake is moving inside grasses, you hardly know that a snake is passing because the skin is blending with the environment. Thank you, thank you. I can see your thumbs up. Thank you very much. Okay, so the snake, it will be very hard for you to detect that a snake is there. Why? Because the skin color has blended with the grasses. So if you are not very careful, you may get hurt by the snake. So these animals, they have their ways of adapting and surviving even among predators. Okay, so that is counter shading. a process whereby they are trying to blend their skin with their environment in order to survive. That is counter shading. Also, we have warning coloration. What do we mean by warning coloration? You see, warning coloration is another name of aposematism. Aposematism. Warning coloration is also known as aposematism. So what do we mean by warning coloration? This is when an organism has bright contrasting colors. They have bright contrasting colors, just as the name implies, warning coloration. So they have bright contrasting colors to warn predators that it is toxic, that they are dangerous. They try to display all these kind of colors. All right. For instance, the mushroom that belongs to fungi. Yes, so that is under fungi. So mushroom, what they do is that there are some particular species of mushroom that displays different colors. So when you see the color, it will even be difficult for you to move close to it that you want to eat it, because you feel like, why is this thing like this, as in, so it's not looking eatable. So it's very difficult to move close to it and pluck it. Okay, so those are examples of warning coloration. There are also some mushrooms, we call it death cap. There are also some mushrooms that display yellow coloration. So they display yellow color. This is to tell you that they are extremely toxic. You should not move close to them. So all these organisms, they have many ways of protecting themselves. So the warning coloration is the process whereby the organisms display many colors in order for it to scare away the predators, So they tend to display different colors. All right. So both the counter shading and the warning coloration, they are survival adaptations. So they just have their own ways of adapting to the environment and surviving. So we call it survival adaptation. The counter shading and the warning coloration, we call it survival adaptation. So we move to another part, which we call various castes in social insects. All right. So I want to wipe off this board. I believe you have grasped what is there in. All right. So I'm going to wipe it off now. Okay. So we move to various castes. Various castes in social insects. Various castes in social insects. What do we mean by caste? Caste is okay, before I start, we are all aware that these organisms too, they have their own these insects, they have their own ways of um giving themselves labor, like taking care of themselves. They have different names they call themselves. They have colonies. Okay, they have colonies. This is a topic on its own, a subtopic on its own. Okay, so this caste, they have division of labor. The insects, they have division of labor among themselves, and that is what we want to look into. Various castes in social insects. All right. So, what are social insects? What do we mean by social insects? Social insects, they are species that live in highly organized colonies with division of labor. Just like I explained earlier, that all these insects, they also have their own way in which they share labors to themselves. So they have division of labor among themselves. But there are particular insects that does that, and that is what we are going to look into. Okay, so social insects, like we have the termites, we have the bees, we have the bees, we have the termites, we have the ants. All these are social insects. So I'm going to be sending some to us so that we can see. I'm going to be sending some so we can see. Okay. So we have the termites, we have the bees, we have the ants, we have the insects, we have um the wasps, we have the wasps. Okay, so all these insects, of they have their own way they have their own way of adapting to the environment. They have their own way of adapting to the environment. Okay, so we are going to be looking at them one after the other. We're going to be looking at them one after the other, and using termites as a case study. Using termites as a case study, we have the kings, we have the queen, we have the worker, we have there are four. Yes, there are four, and they try to divide the labor among themselves. Okay, so in order to make them survive the environment, so those are termites. Okay, so we have the termite, we have the bee, we have the wasps, we have the ants. All these are social insects. They are social insects. So we are going to be looking at termites as a case study. All right. We are going to be looking at termites as a case study. So what does termites do? How do they adapt to their environment? What are the major castes in termites? Number one, we have reproductive caste. We have reproductive caste. We have the worker caste. We have the worker caste. We have the soldier caste. And we have the soldier caste. Then we have the Alates. We have the Alates. All these, they are winged reproductive. Okay, so all of these, they have their own groups. Okay, so like this reproductive caste, this belongs to the king and the queen. We have the kings and the queen under reproductive caste. And what do? They try to reproduce. They are the ones that reproduce to new young ones. To young ones, they are the one in charge. They are referred to the reproductive caste. And coming to the worker caste, all these ones, are the wingless termites. They are the wingless termites. Okay, so they are responsible for carrying food. If you notice, um during the rainy season, you see termites. Some of them, they'll be carrying some things into their holes. We call the whole colony. They'll be carrying those things into their holes, and you'll be like, what are they carrying? Like, even if they see Gary on the floor, you see them small carrying it. So all those ones, they are the worker. They are the workers caste. So their work is to forage for food. Their work is to feed and groom other members in the colony. They also maintain and repair the nest. That is the work of the worker caste. Okay, so also we have the soldier caste. What do? They defend the colony, just like normal soldier. The soldier, they protect the country, protect your areas and all of that. So the same work that soldiers does, the same work that soldiers do, that's what the soldiers do when it comes to insects. So the soldier caste, they try to defend their colony from predators. Okay, so we also have the Alates. So these ones, they are winged reproductive. They are winged reproductive. And what do? They are the future kings and queens. They develop into kings and queens. So these are the major castes in termites. All right, these are the major castes in termites. So um then coming to the um worker caste, there is something about them. There is something specific about them. They lack pigmentation. They lack pigmentation. Why? Because they are always inside their colony. They don't, you know, um they don't involve in other works out there. What they do is to take care of the colonies. So they are always in there. They lack pigmentation. So I want you to take note of that. They lack pigmentation, the worker caste. Okay. So we move to adaptation of organisms with respect to different levels. All right. So I want you to give me your total attention. I want to wipe off this board now. I believe we have grasped what is there in. Okay. So we want to look at another level of adaptation in organisms in respect to different features. In respect to different features. Number one, so adaptation of organisms with respect to the following. With respect to the following. Okay. So number one, we have beak, the beak and leg adaptation. How does this feature allow organisms to survive in their environment? If you are with me, please thumbs up. If you are with me, please thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. Okay, please ask your question using the chat box. Just type it and we are going to treat it after the class. Type your question and we are going to treat it after the class. You can type it using the chat box. All right. So the beak and leg adaptation in birds. How does the beak, their legs, how does these features allow them to survive in that environment? As we all know that we have different birds. We have some birds that they have a very pointed beak. Some of them they have a very curved beak. Some of them, their legs are pointed. Some of them, their legs are warped. So how does these features allow them to survive? Okay, so Enoch, please just type your question. All right, so we are going to attend to it after this class. Thank you. So talking about the bird types, okay, so we have the carnivores. We have the carnivores. What do we mean by carnivores? I believe we are familiar with the word carnivores, that is the animals that feed on flesh. Okay, so we have some birds that feed on flesh. All right, so this type of birds, what do? They have sharp, curved beaks. They have sharp, curved beaks. We have the bird type, we have the beak adaptation. We have the beak adaptation. So the carnivorous birds, the birds that belong to this category, they have sharp, curved beaks. Okay, so this allows them to be able to tear flesh. It allows them to be able to tear flesh. So also their legs, they have strong, sharp legs, sharp talons that allows them to hold what they are tearing. All right, so that is the bird type. That is the beak adaptation and leg adaptation of carnivores. Okay, so going to another bird type, we have the granivores. All right, so we have short, thick beaks, the granivores. What do? They are the seed, they are the seed eaters. The granivores are the seed eaters. Okay, thank you for your question, Enoch. We are going to attend to it. All right, then Deborah, you can send your question to using the chat box as well. Okay, so the seed eaters, the granivores, they are the seed eaters. What do? For and for a bird to be able to pick seed, of course, they have a very short and thick beak, just like your fowls. All right, just like your hen, your fowl, they have very short and thick beak to be able to pick the seeds, whatever you give to them, be it corn or anything seed, they use their beak, their short beak to pick it. Okay, so I believe you are jotting something down. The time will not permit us to write notes, so just try and jot down. So they have short, thick beak. All right, so we also have another bird type, which is the nectivores. We have the nectivores. All these ones, they are nectar sucker. They are nectar feeders. Okay, so for a bird to be able to suck nectar in a plant, what does it what is the feature of the bird? What is the feature going to be? The feature is going to be that the beak is pointed. So the beak is pointed and slender. It is long, pointed, and slender in order to be able to penetrate into the plant and suck the nectar. So the feature of the nectivores is long, slender beak. Long, slender beak. So we also have the filter feeders. Filter feeders. These ones too, they are the birds that take they suck filters. So all these ones, so they need to have a um very flat and long beak in order to be able to penetrate into the plant. Okay, so another one is the insectivores, that is the insect eaters. Just as the name implies, the insectivores. Okay, so the insectivores, we have the beak is going to be thin and pointed beak. Thin and pointed beak for the insectivores. Thin pointed beaks. Okay, someone is asking for the topic. This topic is adaptation, structural, functional, and behavioral adaptation of organisms. Okay, so I am going to slow it down. All right, so this is adaptation. The topic as a whole is adaptation. Don't forget, we have been talking about living organisms. The first class we had was about living organisms, and the following class was level of organization of organisms. So we are trying to look at how the organisms adapt to their environment, how they survive in their environment. That is what we are looking at. Okay, so and Enoch, I am going to work on that. Thank you. So we also have another features. We also have another feature, which is the piscifor. The piscifors, from the word pisces. All right. All these, they are fish eaters. They are fish eaters. And what will be the feature of a bird that eat fish? So looking at it, you don't need to cram it, just try and relate with your environment and look at it for a bird to be able to eat fish. Then what will be the feature of the beak? All right, so for the piscivores, their beak is long and sharp, long, sharp beak. That is the beak adaptation for the piscivores. Okay, so we have talked on the counter shading. We started from the meaning of structural, functional, and behavioral adaptation of organisms. So I am going to recap. I want to recap because of those that joined us late. All right. So after then, we are going to treat some past questions. Okay. Then we'll attend to the person that answered that asked the question. Okay. So I want to recap now. We started from structural, functional, and behavioral adaptations of organisms. Okay, so that is what we started with. We looked at the structural, the functional, and behavioral adaptations of organisms, whereby we said the structural are the physical features of organisms. All right, the physical features that allows them to survive in their environment. And the physical features means something you can see with your own eyes. For instance, the tortoise, they have a very hard shell covering them and it protects their whole body from predators. So this is an example of a physical feature of an organism. So that is an organism exhibiting structural adaptation. All right. So we also talked about the functional adaptation, whereby I said it is the internal biological processes that help organisms survive in their environment. So this you cannot see with your eyes. All right. So we call it functional adaptation because the process occurred inside of them. It's an internal process that occurs in organisms. So you can't see it with your own eye. And an example is a frog trying to absorb water and oxygen from water inside water. So it is a functional adaptation. It occurs inside of them. All right, that is an example of a functional adaptation. And also, we talked about the behavioral adaptation, that is the behavior of each animals, each organisms that allow them to that allow them to survive in the environment. You are welcome, Deborah. Okay, so under the behavioral adaptation, now we looked at the hibernation. We looked at what we call hibernation. Okay, that is very important. Everything is important. As we'll be treating past questions, you will see that everything we have been talking about, they are UTME questions. So we talked about hibernation, aestivation under behavioral adaptation. So hibernation, I said hibernation occurs during cold season, while aestivation occurs during hot season. So I made mention of an example of an organisms trying to, keep itself. They conserve their energy. So their daily activities is reduced. They are inactive because of the cold season. They have deep sleep, just like humans, just like human being. During cold weather, you don't feel like doing anything. You want to reserve your energy, you just want to be on the bed enjoying sleep. So we have the same thing in organisms. So during cold season, they have deep sleep, they are inactive, they just try to conserve their energy. All right. So also we have estivation. This occurs in hot season, and the organisms try to keep themselves in order not to lose too much water. For instance, the snail, they cover themselves with what we call mucus. If you notice during hot season, if you see a snail, you may see something whitish on top of it, covering it. So that thing is what we call estivation. It's trying to conserve the little water it has. It does not want to lose all the nutrients, all the water for it to survive. So it covers itself with that mucous material. Okay, so also we talked about the counter shading, warning coloration in different organisms. All right, and I said counter shading is the process whereby the animal tries to blend with the environment. The animals try to blend with the environment. They, for instance, the fish, they have dark upper body and their below also blends with the water. So it will be very difficult for predators to catch them. It will be very difficult for you to see them. So that is what we call counter shading. All right. So we also have warning coloration. From the word coloration, the organisms try to, display different colors. For instance, I use the mushroom. There are some mushrooms that have a very colorful cap. All right. And this colorful cap, they are displaying it for you to see that they are toxic, for the organisms around them to see that, oh, this is toxic. I should not move close to it. So it is their own way of protecting themselves. All right. It is their own way of protecting themselves, of surviving among predators. So that is warning coloration. Okay. So warning coloration and counter shading, they are survival adaptations. They help them to survive in their environment. So we now move to what we call the various castes in social insects. Okay, so I believe you are following. All right. So Enoch, are you okay now? Please let me know if you are okay. I know we have not answered your question, but are you flowing with the class now? Are you flowing with the explanations? Please let me know using the chat box. Okay, so I'm talking about the um various castes in social insects. I made mention of four different castes, four different types of castes, whereby we have the reproductive caste, we have the worker caste, we have the soldier caste, we have the Alates. These are the major four castes in termites. In termites. Okay, so and I mentioned different types of social insects, which is the ant, the bee, the wasps, and the termites. All right. I mentioned the termites, I mentioned the bee, I mentioned the wasps, and I mentioned the ants. Okay, so we focused on the termites, whereby I said their kings and queen belongs to a reproductive caste. All right, so the kings and the queen, what they do is that they continue to reproduce eggs. They continue to reproduce. That is their own work. That is their job. I talked about division of labor. So all these termites, all these castes, they have different works that they do. So the workers caste, what they do is that they try to look for food and bring it into the colony. They take care of their other members. They try to repair the nest, just like human beings, the way we do our division of labor. So that is how the termite is. Okay, so we have the soldier caste, we have the reproductive caste, the king and queens, we have the worker caste, we have the soldier caste, we have the Alates. Okay, so someone asked a question. Okay, thank you for following. So someone asked a question that when they become the king and queen, what happens next? So what happens next is that they continue to build another colony. So like I said earlier, the work of the king and queens is to reproduce. That is their own job. Their work is not to get food. The workers are to get food for them. The soldiers are to protect the colony. So their own job is to keep on reproducing. So as they are becoming the king and the queen, they are forming another colony. So that is what happens next. It's a continuous process. It's a continuous process, just like how human being reproduce. We give birth to young ones, and when our young ones, when they grow up, they get married, they give birth to young ones. So the same thing happens in termites. So what happens to the king and queen is that they reproduce, and whatever they reproduce, the eggs develops into nymphs, the nymphs develop into the king, the queen, and then that is how the process continues. So do you understand now, Enoch? Do you understand? Please let me know using the chat box. Okay, so this is okay, this is among the insects. Okay, this is among the insects. The humans, I'm going to use human being for you to understand. Someone is asking question that how do you know if they are already the king and queen? Okay, so the thing is, it is among the insects. They can always detect that, just like human being. When you give birth to young ones, you give birth to a baby, you keep on nurturing the baby, you send the baby to school, from there the baby graduates. So when baby graduates and your child says, oh, mommy, daddy, I want to get married, of course you will not even decline, like you will not, because you know that, oh, you are at the stage to get married. So among the insects, they know the one that is the workers, they know the ones that is the king and the queen, they know the one, just like I said earlier, it is division of labor. Okay, so and so they have their own ways of knowing knowing their knowing themselves. Okay, so this is I sent something now, and I'm going to present it. Can you all see? Can you see that? So look at the king, look at the queen, look at, you can see that their pictures are different. You can see that they don't have the same body structure. Okay, Enoch, can you see that? You can see the queen, king. If you can see it, please thumbs up. If you can see what is on the board, please thumbs up. Thank you very much. Yes. So you can see the king. Look at the king. Look at the queen. So any of them, any of the eggs that develops into all this structure, any of them that looks like this, they already know that this is the queen. Anyone that develops like this, they already know that this is the king. And you can see the soldier, you can see the mandibular soldier, you can see the massute soldier, you can see the worker. Anyone that develops into this already know that, oh, I am a worker. So they already know their jobs to do. And you can see the winged male. I hope you know that it is all this termite that develops into what Yoruba call a susun. I don't know if you are familiar with that. So you can see these winged males. This should tell you that the ones that you see that flies, they are male, they are winged male. Okay, so I believe you understand better now. Enoch, do you understand better now? Do you have any other question? Please, I need to know using the chat box. Make use of the chat box so I can know if you got that. Thank you, Emmanuel. Enoch, I'm waiting for you. Do you understand now? Thank you very much for understanding. I'm so glad to hear that. So this is how they get to know. You can see their structures. They have different structures, right? So this is how they get to know themselves. Okay, so because of our time, we'll not be able to treat past questions. So tomorrow we are going to continue from where we stopped. And please, because so that you can have the full grip of what we are taking here, please ensure you don't come late to class. Let our 5 be 5, let our 4 be 4, so that we don't keep going back in order to carry people along. Do you understand? So I had to consider someone that was asking the topic we are treating. So I had to consider the person because I want everybody to learn and understand. All right. So, and it will not be palatable to keep going back to what we have taught already. So please take note of the time and let our 4 be 4, let our 5 be 5, let the time be the time, no African time, so we can be able to cover a lot of things. So tomorrow we are going to continue and treat as many past questions as possible under this topic. And I hope you understand better how the questions come and how to tackle them. So thank you very much for your responses. Thank you for understanding. You can also save the picture and go through the notes to understand better, because tomorrow I'm going to be asking us different questions on what we did today. So thank you very much for your time, and we see tomorrow. Bye.